2023 was known as a year of wars. It began with intensified fighting in Ukraine, with the war-battered nation scraping through its first winter of the conflict. And the year ended with a new war, Gaza burning as Israel took revenge for Hamas's unprecedented attack. Other conflicts raged on, away from headlines, like in Myanmar and Africa's Sahel. As the Earth revolved towards 2024, there were rays of hope on the horizon. If 2023 was the year of wars, 2024 was labeled the year of elections. More than 60 countries were slated to go to polls, including the US, India, Russia, and Taiwan. Some others witnessed emergency elections, like Iran. Now, as we bid goodbye to 2024, the biggest question is, did this year of elections pull the world away from the brink, or push it closer? Arguably the most important event of 2024 was the US presidential election. America is deeply involved in the biggest conflicts gripping the world right now, from Ukraine to Israel, and also those bubbling and threatening to spill into open war, like Taiwan. These issues also dominated the election rhetoric, with the challenger, Donald Trump, promising to end ongoing wars, calling them a drain on America's resources. Meanwhile, incumbent Joe Biden and Vice President and his party's candidate Kamala Harris adopted a more nuanced stance. They said continued support to Ukraine is important to keep Russia at bay. And amidst massive protests against alleged war crimes in Gaza, Biden and Harris repeatedly spoke about Israel's right to self-defense, while also trying to make Prime Minister Netanyahu agree to a ceasefire. On November 5th, the big election day, Donald Trump emerged victorious. He has since continued to promise that once he takes over, he would make sure wars in Europe and the Middle East end. Trump has not revealed his plans publicly, but there have been some hints in source-based news pieces. On Ukraine, Trump may decide to make Russia agreeable to a ceasefire by making Ukraine drop its NATO membership ambition and recognize, or at least not oppose, Russian annexation of its land. On Gaza, Trump reportedly wants Israel to wrap up its war quickly, albeit with a decisive victory. But a challenge awaits Trump here, since the conflict has now spread to Syria, after Lebanon, and tensions between Israel and Iran continue to spike. It remains to be seen how Trump fulfills his promise after taking over on January 20, 2025. The other big election of 2024 was the Russia presidential contest. Just weeks before voting, Russian President Vladimir Putin's biggest rival, Alexei Navalny, died in a prison in the Arctic. Navalny's death sparked some protests in Russia, and even more in Western countries, where Putin was blamed for the incident. Eventually, Putin won the election in a landslide. His supporters called it an endorsement of Putin's decisions in recent years, including the invasion of Ukraine. However, Western powers called the Russian election farcical, especially in the absence of any credible opposition candidates. Whether real or a sham, the Russian election reaffirmed Putin's hold on power in the country, and reinvigorated his campaign in Ukraine. Another country closely involved in ongoing conflicts, Iran, also went to polls in 2024. However, the presidential election was unplanned, necessitated by the untimely death of incumbent Ebrahim Raisi. He died in a tragic helicopter crash in May along with many senior officials, including his foreign minister. The ensuing election saw a contest between hardliners, similar to Raisi, and moderates. Before the election, Many commentators said that the moderates were part of the race just for show. The candidates had been vetted by a committee headed by the supreme leader of Iran, Sayyid Ali Khamenei. Many analysts felt that the candidate list was skewed in favor of the hardliners in Tehran. However, Iranians surprised the world by choosing moderate candidate Masoud Pezeshkian as the next president. As a candidate, Pezeshkian was seen as less confrontational towards the West, who believed that Iran needs to engage with Tehran's traditional rivals to escape punishing sanctions and end economic hardships for common Iranians. However, as president, he has not made a dramatic break from the status quo. A big reason for this could also be that when it comes to sensitive arenas like foreign policy and defense, much of the power vests in Iran's supreme leader, and not the president. During Pezeshkian's tenure, Iran launched a direct attack on its biggest enemy Israel in October. This was seen as Tehran's revenge for the assassination of Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh, who was killed in Tehran while visiting for Pezeshkian's oath ceremony. Going into 2025, a major challenge for Iran emerged in the form of regime change in Syria. Bashar al-Assad, who was deposed as Syria's ruler in December 2024, was a key ally of Iran and facilitator of transfer of weapons from Iran to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Assad's ouster has threatened the influence of the Iran-backed Axis of Resistance, a collection of anti-Israel groups in the region. It was not just countries involved in wars that went to polls in 2024. India, one of the biggest and most vocal proponents of peace, also witnessed elections. India, the largest democracy, the most populous country in the world, held an election equally massive in scale. 642 million people cast their vote, over 6 weeks, in 7 phases. The entire election process involved over 15 million people, 400,000 vehicles, nearly 1,700 air sorties and 135 trains, according to news agency Reuters. Eventually, incumbent Prime Minister Narendra Modi emerged victorious. After his re-election, PM Modi visited both Russia and Ukraine, and reiterated India's call for peace in personal meetings with both Russia President Putin and his Ukrainian counterpart Zelensky. Modi had earlier said that this is not an era of war, and this statement was repeated by many world leaders. Given India's history as a peaceful nation, and close ties with Russia and America, and growing relations with Israel, Delhi stands in a unique position to be able to contribute to efforts for peace, including acting as a mediator if needed. So far, we have spoken about conflicts already raging, but there is another big war threatening to break out. After Europe and the Middle East, it is East Asia which is emerging as the next battleground. China has been gradually escalating its rhetoric about annexing Taiwan, even militarily if needed. Beijing's declarations have grown more shrill since the Taiwanese presidential election held in 2024. In May, Taiwan's new president took charge. William Light Ching belongs to the Democratic Progressive Party, which stands for Taiwanese sovereignty and has ruled for 8 years. China sees the party as a threat to its so-called reunification plan. In his inauguration speech, Lai Ching-te told China to stop its aggression against Taiwan and strive to maintain peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and the region, ensuring the world is free from the fear of war. However, soon after, China launched one of its biggest military drills around Taiwan. Chinese warships and fighter jets encircled the island and simulated an invasion. Beijing has kept up its military intimidation since then, with periodic drills and violations of Taiwanese airspace. It remains to be seen whether this is just posturing by China President Xi Jinping for his internal audiences, or if he will dare to launch a fresh war in a bid to immortalize his name as the leader who fulfilled the reunification dream. If 2024 was the year of elections, then 2025 could be called the year of results. The real impact of the elections held, and leaders chosen in 2024 would be known in 2025. On January 20th, Donald Trump will take over as the U.S. president and implement his vision for Ukraine and Israel. Meanwhile, all eyes will be on Russia and Iran to see how they react to Trump's stick-and-carrot foreign policy. The world will also keep an eye on how the unpredictable Trump reacts in case China decides to attack Taiwan.